Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. It's Mishmash Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a tough weekend for me. We had the most beautiful day of the year here on Saturday, and I had it scheduled to go upstate. We're supposed to go upstate with my girlfriend and also go to the Little World's Fair up there, and everything was all set and the weather was perfect, and I come down with a bad case of poison ivy again. And you know, it's so funny. I got the worst poison ivy plant on the planet on my property that, you know, it gets so big after a while I have to remove it, and I get suited up, gloves, the whole thing, and I'm very careful, and I put it in a plastic bag. Next day, boom, I'm blowing up. This one plant, I don't know where it came from. I think it's alien poison ivy. It's the worst I've ever seen. And I have other poison ivy plants I touch. I get a little bit on my hand or something. This thing goes right through your bloodstream. Your whole body swells up. I'm on prednisone right now, a steroid. It's Arnold. Anyway, a few things to talk about today. It's a mosh, a little bit of a chatty Cathy today. But if you bear with me, I was thinking the other day about souvenirs. You know, as you know, I collect and hoard a bunch of different things. Souvenirs. Does anybody still do the souvenir thing? When I was a kid, we used to go on these class trips. And I'll never forget, the class trip was such an enjoyable moment in our life. You know, if you never wanted not to go on these class trips, they were always fun. You went to the zoo, went to the Dude Ranch, you went to the museum, the planetarium. You know, these were the things, I used to love this. You know, you would go there. It felt all different. Everybody, because I went to Catholic, so we had to wear a uniform. You didn't have to wear a uniform. You know, but you would go there, and then you would get on a little cheese bus, you know, the yellow the cheese buses, and they would take you into the city or Long Island, whatever, and you go to wherever you were going. You spent the whole day, and my mother would give me some money for lunch and for souvenirs, and, you know, I wanted to spend it on the souvenirs. You know, I like this stuff. And there's souvenir shops at these places always had the same kind of souvenirs, you know. They had the kind of cheap mugs, and they had remember the big pencil with the tassel on it? They were almost, and I used to like them. I guess, I don't know what I did with them. You know, the big pencil, and then they had all different kind of souvenirs. And, you know, souvenirs were one of those things. There was two different types. There were the types you buy, like if you went on vacation or something. You know, there was a gift shop, and you bought a souvenir. You know, in the 80s, souvenirs started weaning off, and people were getting T-shirts and keychains. Those type of souvenirs. But back in the day, in the early, souvenirs were big in, like, you know, the early days, you know, 50 years ago. Souvenirs were big. So much so that there was two, like I said, there was the kind you buy and the kind you grab. Now, when I say grab, people used to take things as conversation pieces, souvenirs, like a piece of the Berlin Wall, piece of the World Trade Center, or something like that. You know, it was like a conversation piece. Those are the things that weren't sold, more or less, but you would grab. And one of the things I always wish I had, my grandfather, who I didn't know too well. You know, isn't it funny how they were in your family? You have two sets of grandparents, you know, and in my case, you know, we were closer to one set than the other. Like, we didn't see the other set too often. But the one set, you know, we saw all the time. You ever get like that? Some people, you know, they're all together all the time, you know, they equal time. But usually a lot of families, you kind of gravitate towards one, either the mother's parents or the father's parents. You know what I mean? Well, this was my dad's dad, who I really didn't know. And he had a piece of the Hindenburg. Oh, man, I love airships. Dirigibles, lighter than airships. Who doesn't? They are just so cool. Absolutely unbelievable. And, you know, living here, and I went to Lakehurst, New Jersey, where the actual Hindenburg went down, and it was just amazing to see the hangars over there. And my grandfather had a piece, about a 1 foot by 1 foot piece of the outer skin from that dirigible. He took as a souvenir. I don't know what he was doing there. Maybe he was hired to help clean up, whatever. Who knows? But, and a lot of people were grabbing souvenirs, and they even had that special, it wasn't aluminum, I will write it down, but it had a special airframe that people were grabbing, and I wonder what happened to it. I know some of that gets recycled, especially that aluminum stuff, but you know, all that skin and stuff, that would have made great souvenirs. And now you buy like a half of a postage stamp size of that stuff is big money on eBay. But I always wish I knew what happened to that swatch of fabric from the Hindenburg. That was some story, huh? Growing up here where I live, we had a lot of airship, dirigible, and blimp traffic because they would come down the Long Island Sound and go up, and we had LaGuardia Airport real close and another airport, Flushing Airport here. There was always blimps in the air, but you could hear them. Remember that telltale sound of the blimp? You'd be playing baseball and all of a sudden you'd hear, and you go, and everybody would look and you go, blimp! I'll never forget that. The kids would yell out, blimp! And then everybody had to look up and you would just stare at the Goodyear blimp, which was popular here, or some of the other dirigibles. I would have loved to see some of them old Navy airships, you know, the big ones. If you ever get a chance to go to Lakehurst, New Jersey and walk inside one of those airship hangars, it'll change your life. Did for me. Anyway, enough chattering. Let's see what we got going on today. We got a big mosh ahead. Let's get to it. Okay, next up, we got kind of an unusual request today. You remember we did Joel Jacobson's beautiful chisel last week. Well, Gabriel asked, he says, you know, I have an old tool roll that was my grandfather's, and I want to match the tool, and, you know, I want to do it, but I can't have it look new. Is there anything I could do to, you know, restore it, but make it look old, kind of weathered? And I said, yes, you know, we could weather it to make it look like it's 40 years old. Let's do it. Now here we have some water, and you can see here when we dip the chisel in the water and you look, it comes out, you see how that beads up, that water beads up? It's almost comes out relatively dry, considering when you just if I was to give this a shake like that, a lot of the water would come off, and you could see, and that's why we don't usually have a big rust problem, because when you wax it, you know, the water really can't stick, and that's just like if it went to rust. So you see the way it looks now, you could rub your finger along it and it becomes almost dry, you know. Now what you want to do is you would want to take off that wax so that the bluing could stick, because you don't want the bluing solution to bead up like this. So what you have to do, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scrub it with Comet. Okay, we're back from scrubbing it with Everyday Comet. Now we gave it a good scrubbing, and I want to show you something here. Now when we put the water, you see the water here, it will not bead up the same way as it did before. It's supposed to lay flat a little bit, okay? It's not beating up the same way. You see it's kind of, it's almost elongating on there. That's because we got rid of most of the wax and everything. You can see it. Now what you want to do is we're going to wipe it down with denatured alcohol and just keep wiping it. This is squeaky clean. You don't want any wax or residual polishes on there. And let's do that. Okay, now the chisel is very clean. We got a swatch of paper towel. We're using our Brunel's Oxo Blue. Okay, and I'm going to take some of this on here. We're just going to saturate our little swatch like this here. Remember, I got gloves on not to contaminate the metal. And we're going to wipe it on. And this is, this is actual time, okay? I just want you to see how quickly this will turn. And you see it's turning, not only is it turning black quickly, but it's also, it's almost like it's a preliminary rust. But you see how quickly that works? And now over here, we'll do the front of the chisel here, okay? We're not going to go crazy because we want to keep that polished tip. So we're not going to go crazy. We're just going to bring it up to the tip like this and work it sideways, you see? Because I want to keep that tip polished. And work it back. And just hold it on there for a second or two. Work it in to the metal, especially if you're going with the grain. Because, you know, when we sanded it, we were going this way. So you could work it the same way, working it down with the swatch of saturated chemical here. Make sure you get it all over, and then just keep working it and wiping it until you get the nice color you want. When you get the color that you think you're happy with, you know, you wipe it off with a clean paper towel and now it's dry. Now you're going to have to buff it and burnish it using Quado steel wool and some mineral oil. But you could see some of the residual blue, actual blue color, but you'll kind of lose that when you buff it out. But here we take the Quado. We're using some Starrett oil, which is nothing more than mineral oil. And we're going to burnish it in and blend all that in. A little bit of black will come off with the steel wool, but that's what you want. And because we're trying to make this look old. And like I said, you know, you want it to be a little bit blotchy if you want it to look old and weathered. So just wipe it around until you get that finish that you like. And then we'll take it over to the belt sander and we'll just dress up the tip and the back just to keep that shiny and maybe some of the edges. Okay, so we're calling this project done. I think this is pretty much close to an original weathered look that you might see a chisel look like. You know, it looks almost like it was worn, but yet well maintained. You know, I even took, you know, I wanted to keep that on the back, you know, but it looks like something that would be in a tool roll, right? And and I even took the edges down, you see, so that it looks like just years of wear, but not. I think this will match nice with the rest of the tools if you had to do it. And if you ever want to take it back, you can always just run it through the 5-wheel and take off the bluing. But I don't know. There we go. I kept it, obviously, the top two. I just like that look. So what do you think? That's like a weathered look, right? Something that looks like it's 40 years old. If I was to pull this out of some brown paper with cosmoline on it, you would think it was never used, I think. Okay, next up, real quick, we got one of the subscribers, it goes by name, The Kid from Y-Town, asked a very good question. He said, you know, I was watching some of your older videos, and if you haven't seen my videos on the homebrew lubricants, and I'm not saying this to, you know, to boast, but I think they're really good videos and worth watching. These are lubricants I came up with, not just the 50-50, I didn't invent that, but I did kind of invent this one and another one. They're lubricants that mix common household items together that really are fantastic. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested, but one of the lubricants I did that I came up with was 50-50 petroleum jelly and mineral oil. Petroleum jelly being Vaseline or something like that. You don't have to use the trademark one, although we'll go through Vaseline one day. Fantastic invention. And mineral oil. And I use the mineral oil that you get at the drugstore, not, mineral oil you can use baby oil and stuff, but it has fragrance and things like that. You get the mineral oil that you get at the drugstore. It's more or less, it's non-scented, it's really good. And you mix it. And when I say 50-50, it don't have to be exact, because depending on how you mix it, you can change and customize your viscosity. Just think of those words, customize your viscosity. It would make a good t-shirt. So let me show you basically, he said, do you use this to like protect your tools? I use this for so many things, this 50-50. And guys, I know a bunch of you made it out there and you all say it's great stuff. So here's what you do. The first thing you do, let's say you had a piece of steel like now. This is a square, and you know, they're prone to rust because of what they're made of. So the first thing you would do is you would take some WD-40. Now WD-40 is a great cleaner. That's really what it's good. So you take some WD-40. Now, this was pretty clean, but look, I'm picking up dirt already, you know. So you take WD-40, you wipe it down like this. Really, you should be wearing gloves when you're using WD-40. It's not, you know, it's not the best thing not to have. But after you wipe it down, okay, you dry it off a little bit. Now, here's the best part. You don't need gloves with this. The 50-50, this is what I have my viscosity coming out. You see what that looks like? You take it like this and you wipe down your tools, okay? And it's so nice because you wipe it down with your hands. You don't have to worry about chemicals leaching into your bloodstream like with some of those other chemicals. And when you wipe it down, you take some paper towel, you wipe it off like this, and it's a fantastic protectant for all kinds of metals, for all kinds of tool handles. Works great for tool handles like here, like the Kleins we did. You wipe them down like that, you put a little bit on there, and then you wipe it off. And it's great. This stuff works for everything. Even blued things like that, you wipe it down. Again, you're doing it with your hand. Very satisfying. Just wipe it off, and it's a great protectant. You gotta try this if you have. The only drawback with that 50/50 on tools is that they will attract more dust, you know, shop dust in the air, because they have that coating on there, but it wipes right off. It will not attract rust. It's really good, and it keeps your hands nice and soft. Next up, real quick, you know, if you've been following the show for a while, you know I'm a big fan of possums. I love possums, always have. I will tell you the story one day why I feel akin to the beautiful possum creature. And it just so happens I was coming home from my walk the other day, beautiful night, and I see this one of my possum. And this guy, this little guy, now possums don't live long. They only live a couple years, unfortunately. And living in the city here, there aren't many places you could find them. You know, we have raccoons, we have other things, but possums, you know. So I'm so happy when I see one on my property. I even have a hole in the bottom of my garage so they can go in and out. I've had them here for years. And I'm always amazed that when one dies after, you know, from natural causes, another one will pop up. So a couple months ago, I see this little guy. He was about the size of a Nerf football. A little guy on the porch. A possum. I was like, look at this. I got a new possum. I was so happy. A baby. Never seen babies around here. So I've been feeding, you know, and he always, or the possum comes every day, eats what's left over with the cat food, but not hoggish. Like the raccoons will finish everything. They will not stop until everything's gone. The possum's a true gentleman. He comes up, he has a couple mouthfuls, he drinks his little water, and then he walks away happy as a clam. Makes me so happy. I love the guy. So I'm looking at him the other day, and check this out. Tell me what you think. Is it me, or does this possum look pregnant to you? How beautiful it would be to have a possum with a litter at my house. I would just love it. Okay, next up, our good friend Reggie from Reggie on the Road over in the UK. Good friend of mine. Great guy. He put out a challenge to me. He watched This Old Tony's video on the filing vise, and he said he's going to try and mock one up. But I have to tell you, I've been using these type of vices for filing vices. If you've ever seen, this is probably one of the most overlooked vices that you can get. You see them all the time at flea markets or garage sales, tractor shows, things like that. They go fairly inexpensive. You can buy them brand new, you know, Asian-made ones, cheap. And you say, but they look kind of primitive, you know, because they're blockish. But there's a reason for it. It's ingenious. Let me show you why these are so invaluable to have in your shop. Now, the reason these are called machinist vices is because machinists use them all the time. Now, let's say you had to perform some operations on this piece of stock that we just have clamped in there, for example. Let's say I wanted to put a hole going through it like this and also a cross hole going through it like that, and I wanted to finish off the top or do something else. So now I put it in the vise here, okay, and I could drill it down here. You know, I could do my little drilling, whichever I had to do to go through. Then, if I want to go through the side, I can just ingeniously flip this over like this, and I could do my drilling through the side here, you see? I could go right through the side here. Now, that's two operations I performed without having to change the workaround. But here's the best part, and the reason you can do the same thing here. You could turn it on its edge here, and you could do some operation that way. So that's why all these surfaces are ground like that. I know it looks primitive, but there's a reason. But here's the best part. After you do your operations or whatever, you could take it to the vise. Yeah, I could take my article over to the vise, and I could put it into the vise here like this, and I could use my file or whatever and file it flat, okay? Now you can see how that works. Now, also another beautiful thing is that you could turn it at an angle, any angle you want, up, down, like this, to do whatever kind of filing operation or other operation you want in the vise. Again, the reason for the flat jaws. So if you don't have one of these, or you ever see them at a flea market and you say, you know what, pick one up and put it in your bag of tricks. Remember to put it in your mental bag of tricks so that you use it. Okay, so in closing, I had to cut off about 15 minutes of me chatting off this video. Can you believe it? Anyway, I hope you have a great start of your week. We'll see you again on Wednesday. Take care now. Bye-bye.